So the police were shocked that this guy says, yeah, I know him. And, so he identifies him. And they said, don't you want to tell us who you are? No, I don't want to go on the record that I know him, but I know him. And he said, oh, I think he's 21. He knew everything about Tommy. He goes, but I don't know where he lives, even though he had picked him up at our house just a few hours before. Anyway, this guy ends up following the ambulances to the hospital because he had Tommy's phone in his pocket, so we saw every place it went. And then he showed up at our home. And we were waiting for Tommy, and my husband had been calling Tommy to see where he was and was worried. First of all, he didn't like the look of David Knight when David Knight came here to pick him up. I was not home, but my husband was. And he kept calling and calling. This guy shows up at the door, and he says, hey, he says, do you remember me? I'm David Knight. He goes, yeah, I know who you are. He says, but where's Tommy? And he goes, well, I have his phone. He goes, where's Tommy and why do you have his phone? So we invited him in, and he proceeded to tell us this far-fetched story about Tommy. Changed all the times. He said, we were at a bar, and this happened several hours ago, and he was drinking, and then I lost him. And I looked for him for hours, and then I finally see a whole bunch of police cars. And in the video, you can see that it took him, he went straight to that parking structure where Tommy fell, ran from there, went around the buildings, and came right back. But anyway, he said, I had hours looking for him, and then I saw some police cars, and so I went over there, and I tried to help identify Tommy, and blah, blah, blah. So he told us what hospital to call in San Luis Obispo. It turns out my husband's a nurse there, and it's a major trauma center, so we would have called there first anyway. But my husband was calling. I'm in the living room. Our kitchen's right off side here. And he sat there trying to listen to my husband's conversation. So I sat there and talked to him very loudly and, making conversation so my husband can have some privacy. And he goes, I'm trying to eavesdrop on this conversation. And oh my God, it just scared me. And so anyway, at that point, my husband said, Mary Jane, he says, they couldn't say Tommy died. And I sat here, and I was sitting next to this son of a bitch, I'm sorry, on my couch. And I just sat there and I started screaming and pounding on the sofa, and I was just so upset. And my husband came and he covered me, and we were just screaming. And then finally I looked up at this guy to see what kind of reaction he had, and he was sitting there looking at us like fascinated. Oh my gosh. Just like he was really enjoying watching me fall apart, all of us. So my husband said something to him, and I went running into the bedroom, and I called my brother. And I called my brother and said, Glenn, get here as quickly as you can. The worst thing that's ever happened has happened. And I didn't want to tell him exactly what happened because my brother had had a heart attack a couple months before. But anyway, my brother was here in 2 minutes because he lives just a couple blocks from here. And this guy was leaving because my husband told him to leave. And he started doing this crazy thing. That's why I got up. I forgot about this. But David Knight sat here and he was going, oh, how could Tommy have done this to me? How could Tommy have done this to me? He turned himself into the victim. And my husband started yelling at him, telling him to leave, so I went to call my brother. And then my brother got here immediately, and he was by the front door. And my brother just looked at this guy, and he heard us screaming, and he's like, what's going on? He's very confused. And this guy looks at him, and he goes, he's dead. And my brother was like, what? He's looking around and he hears us. Oh my God, we're really wailing. And he goes, what is going on here? And he goes, he's dead. And my husband got very upset with him. And he says, I told you to leave. And the man ran like he was running an Olympic marathon, ran to his car. And, you're not thinking at this point, maybe we should be out there getting his license plate number. Maybe we should take a picture of this guy, maybe whatever. Anyway, we just wanted to get to the hospital and see our son and, just really see if this was true. Because, it's all so much fathom. We got to the hospital, and the police wondered how we knew to get there. And we told them this guy showed up, and he was with Tommy. And I said, he even told us he tried to help you guys. He said, no, he didn't just try to help. He actually identified your son. So this is a really weird story. Anyway, he wanted more information on the guy, and I told him what bar they had gone to, and they went there and retrieved all the information. But our case was not followed as closely as it should have been, and here we are 6 years later, we're still doing the investigation. One thing I'd like to say, there have been quite a few cases in San Luis Obispo. Kristen Smart is one, Andrea Crawford and Rachel Newhouse are two others. People that were murdered, and a lot of times, not every case, but a lot, and there have been a lot of hazing cases in San Luis Obispo where students have died. In a lot of cases, these things are happening while people are drinking large amounts of alcohol. And we tell our kids to please be careful. In my son's case, and in one other case that I just mentioned, somebody gave them large amounts of alcohol and got them so intoxicated that this is your biggest enemy. You need to really be aware of your surroundings. One thing I can tell students in general, if you go out in a group, please come home in that same group and don't leave a single person behind. Keep an eye out for each other. And if you meet somebody at a bar or whatever, don't go home with that person. You know, go back to your dorm, go back to where you live, and vet this person before you ever meet them again. Make sure that they're good people. And, you know, when you see somebody that's in trouble, regardless if it's a man or a woman, if my son had been a 21-year-old woman running through the streets of San Luis Obispo saying, help, someone's after me, many people would have helped him. But unfortunately, with young men, a lot of people won't help. And it's really important that when you call 911 and they ask you, oh, you know, what are they wearing, whatever, can you just make sure that they're actually sending help? And if they say something like, oh, is it just a homeless person? You know, you just say, what difference does that make? We need help. This person needs help, and they need help right now, and I'm not leaving until help arrives. If you're a little bit afraid, keep your distance, but make sure that help arrives. That's so important. So we are working on this. We actually have prevented 3 other people from becoming victims. We've had a lot of flyers out there, and one young man works at Costco. One other, I can't even tell you the other 2. One is a neighbor of this person, and one was somebody, a coworker, that we have prevented because of our flyers. They have this information. Also, a friend of mine here in Atascadero, a young man, told me that he was at a bar here in Atascadero, and there was an older man offering to buy them drinks, and they took the offer. A lot of people would do that. Don't do it. Anyway, their drink was roofied, and they're not certain exactly who this guy was, but we're about 80% certain we know who this person was. So this county has a group of men, they call themselves the Chicken Hawks, and they are after young men. And, you know, I have to hope that in this next school year, starting in 2025, the fall and spring, that Cuesta College and Cal Poly will issue warnings, you know, about this person. And of course, we want our whole county to be on alert. The guy's about 62 years old, about 6 feet tall, blue eyes, and I would say not heavy, kind of medium build, but very strong. So, you know, we need to just be aware. And anyway, God bless you all. Thank you for listening to my story.